We are 3 weeks into the season, and there have been some surprise teams, some surprise players. But what I want to know from you, what are the biggest surprises, your top 3 surprises for the NFL this season? We haven't looked at each other, so I'm sure there's some carryover because there have been some pretty obvious ones, but I'm curious to know where you go.
Well, let's go right to where we just finished from. And guys, I want to say it. First, he was Danny Dimes. Then he was Vanilla Vic. Now we have Indiana Jones, and he's 3-0. The 3 coolest nicknames I think I've ever seen for a quarterback, and he's been doing a fantastic job. And what is he doing a fantastic job? Because he's doing exactly what Brian Daboll asked of him the first year. When Brian Daboll got to New York, if you remember where he came from before, where did he come from before? Buffalo.
Yep.
Where he had a 6'5", 230-pound, super athletic quarterback that was very raw out of Wyoming, and he turned him into what Josh Allen became. When he first gets to New York, he played Daniel Jones the same way.
Yep.
We're going to hand the ball off. We're going to let the run game go. You're going to throw a couple of times a game. Don't make a ton of mistakes, and we go. And that's how it started. But I think somewhere along the lines, he saw it going bad, and it almost looked like they turned Daniel Jones into the fall guy, right? So what did they do? At no point did Daniel Jones ever have a real number 1 receiver. It was, like we just said, it was Darius Slayton, it was Jalen Hyatt, it was Wan'Dale Robinson, it was no tight end. And then what did they do his last year? They gave away the guy who went on to run for 2,000 yards, be named by his peers the number 1 player in football, and he just led them to a Super Bowl. So it's like Daniel Jones was put in every position to fail. I used to defend him up in New York and get killed for it. They'd say how terrible he was. Just don't ask too much of him, and that's what they've done in Indianapolis so far. That's been my number 1 surprise so far.
That was my number 2 surprise, that Daniel Jones is an MVP candidate.
Right?
He is completing 74% of his passes. He's been close to perfect. The Colts are a playoff team.
Right.
The AFC has been turned up so upside down, which might have some of our other storylines in this topic, that the Colts could contend for a Super Bowl run. It's not that crazy to think. Once you get there is half the battle. The division is a mess. I don't believe in Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars. I've already seen him and his coach going at it on the sideline. Houston and Tennessee are abysmal. Tennessee is going to be one of the worst teams in the league. Houston, maybe they turn it around, but I think it'll be too late. Daniel Jones and the Colts are a legit playoff team. I never thought those words would come out of my mouth. I will say this, though. I did think Daniel Jones going to Indianapolis was the best opportunity for him. I was not a believer in Anthony Richardson. I thought that was a boom or a bust. He was injury-riddled, and I didn't think he would be that good of a quarterback. And because of what you mentioned, there's also another similarity. Jonathan Taylor is one of the better backs in the league. If you give any quarterback a top-tier running back in a run game like that, it opens up so much in the pass game. Play-action pass, the protection's better because play-action pass protection is better. Passing lanes open up. You're able to control the time of possession so your defense has some of the workload off of them. I agree with you 100%. The question I have for you is where does Daniel Jones then rank? Because there's a lot of quarterbacks that you described as, well, if you put a lot of good players around them and you don't ask them to do too much, then they can be really good. Does this mean that the Giants were wrong, or does it mean that they just failed to do exactly what the Colts are doing?
If the Giants, they outthought themselves. I think if they continued to do what they started doing, they would have continued to see growth from Daniel Jones. I'm a big believer in, and you can correct me because it's your position and you've done it. I'm a big believer in, I look at my lifetime, and I think there's probably 6 or 8 quarterbacks tops in the world who do it really well. If you have one of those guys, you're always in the mix. I look at the last 20 years, any team with Tom Brady, any team with Aaron Rodgers, any team with Peyton Manning, any team with Phillip Rivers, any team with Ben Roethlisberger, Drew Brees, Russ Wilson for his first 10. There's probably 10 guys like that in the world that I think can really make a difference. I think the next 10 or 12 are sort of interchangeable, right? If you just don't make a ton of mistakes, you could fall between 10 and 23. And then there's those young kids or the ones who are just really bad that probably shouldn't be starting and will be replaced. But you could tell me, I'd be interested to hear what you think as a quarterback. How many guys are actually, because Cam touched on this and got killed.
Right.
How many guys do you think are game changers versus game managers?
I think there's, in every era, like whatever you pick. So currently, and I would say this is probably consistent over time, between 3 and 5 quarterbacks, active quarterbacks. Like I think Patrick Mahomes, he can carry any team.
You're gonna name him right in 2 seconds.
Right, exactly. Joe Burrow, who's hurt, and he's done it before with a bad roster, with a bad offensive lineman. Is Josh Allen in that conversation? I think Lamar Jackson is. So I think those are the 4. Those are the elite 4, and a couple of them don't even have Super Bowls yet. haven't even been to the Super Bowl. Burrow's hasn't won it. Mahomes has multiple, but Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson haven't done it. But you feel like, you know what? Whatever roster I put them on, they could win. Aaron Rodgers was that guy, but he's past his prime. Sure. I don't think he has the elusivity. He's still not at that elite level. But at every given time, I think there's between 3 and 5 quarterbacks in the NFL who you can truly say, any roster, they're going to take them to a playoff run.
And that's the same. I feel the exact same way. And that's what it was like the generation before. It was my whole life. And I would.
So is this a good comp for Daniel Jones right now? Because I think which I think is a good spot to be in. Because I feel like, and Kirk Cousins isn't in this territory anymore.
Right.
I think Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott.
Right.
You could go with Sam Darnold recently.
Yeah.
You know, what he did in Minnesota, what he's doing now. Sort of that they can be really good. They can put up good numbers. And, you know, they can get you to a Super Bowl. You can win with them. You're not going to win because of them.
100%. I think that's almost like, that's where like Dilfer fell, right?
Yeah.
Just don't make mistakes, lean on the strengths of your team, and ask this guy to make 2 plays or 3 plays a game that make a difference. And that's it for you. I mean, that's how I've always felt, that between 10 and probably 23, always thought we're all interchangeable and you can do that. I mean, I look through the teams right now. You got some of these young quarterbacks have shown some stuff. I think Bo Nix could be a good little player. I think a couple of these young rookies, but I mean
right. Are they ever going to elevate to that?
Right. Is Jaden Daniels is probably on the cusp of that? Maybe
Baker Mayfield
took the words out,
but
of my
he
mouth.
hasn't done it yet. Like I think you have to sustain it over time.
I agree,
and you have to have some playoff success over time, which Lamar hasn't even had. But I do feel like his talent is elite.
But those 2 guys have made plays in games that make me think, oh, okay, you know what I mean? And the rest of these guys kind of. But that's what it is with Daniel Jones. I think right now, if he finished the year like this, I think he'd probably fall between, like you said, those 4 are your top 4. Those are your guys right now. I think Baker's right outside of there. I think probably Justin Herbert's right outside of there. You might even be able to put Justin Herbert in there. A little bit of playoff success. I think maybe he makes that jump. And then I think it's the rest of them. I think it's Allen, Burrow, Pat, Lamar, Herbert, and maybe Jaden Daniels, but we saw I thought CJ Stroud was going to be there.
Me too.
A little while
it was a one-hit wonder.
Yeah,
so far,
he's
really struggled the next 2 years.